Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're going to be making fried rice. Now, fried rice is a pretty simple meal, and you can add a little bit to it and actually make it a one-pot dish. And you can also cook a big pot of long grain rice ahead of time and use it in several dishes throughout the week, which will save you a lot of time if you're working and coming home and cooking at night. But for this recipe, you're going to need about a cup of uncooked long grain rice, which is going to take 2 cups of water and a little butter and stuff like that. And I've already got my 2 cups of water over at the stove boiling. You're going to need 2 eggs, about half a cup of carrots, and about half a cup of peas. The carrots and the peas are mostly for color. You're going to need some fat to fry it in. I just use butter. I don't buy anything special. And I've got my butter here. This is about half a stick of butter, and I've divided it up. Part of it's going in my rice when I cook it. Part of it will go in the pan to fry it, and a little bit of it will go in the pan to fry my eggs. Now, I'm just seasoning it with salt, pepper, and soy sauce, and I'm actually using the liquid aminos, which is a soy sauce substitute. But I'm adding to it about 3 cups of chopped cabbage. And this is about half a head of cabbage that I had left over when I made coleslaw. And you can add other vegetables to this, but adding the cabbage is going to do several things. First, it's going to cut the calories absolutely in half. Second, it's going to add a lot of nutrients to it because long grain rice doesn't have many nutrients in it by itself. But if you add the cabbage, cut the rice with the cabbage, it puts vegetables in your meal, which makes it a complete meal. Now, you can also add a little meat to this. You can add chicken, you can add pork, you can add beef, whatever you've got. Canned stuff, leftovers, it doesn't matter. Anything will work. And I've just got a can of chicken breast that I'm going to add to it. Because, like I said, that gives you a complete meal. It gives you protein, it gives you vegetables, and then you've got your starch or your rice for kind of your filler. But let's go over to the stove and start cooking. Now, when you're making rice, long grain rice, like I said, you can cook a great big pot of this and have it in meals through the week. You can do this. You could do stuffed peppers. You could, if you had leftover beef or something, you could do some gravy with it and pour it over rice and have that for dinner. But I'm just adding part of my butter and some salt to my water. Now, you want to make sure your water is rapidly boiling and add your rice to it. Give it a little stir. And then turn it down so that it doesn't boil over, but make sure it keeps boiling. I'm going to cook this on kind of medium-low, somewhere between low and medium, and you want to set your timer for 20 minutes. Now, if you do that and you leave the lid on it, your rice will come out perfect every time. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of butter to my pan to cook my egg in. And I'm going to put a little salt and a little pepper in my egg, not too much. Give it a little whisk so it's fluffy. And you do want to add your egg to a hot pan. You don't want to add it to a cold pan. It changes the texture of it if you add it to a cold pan. Now, you can cook this in a sheet, just cook it like an omelet and roll it up and chop it up. But that to me is just a silly waste of time when you can just scramble it up and get it in small pieces, and it cooks faster if you scramble it a little bit too. That looks pretty good there, and it just takes a second to cook it. So now what you want to do is you want to take this out of your pan. You don't have to worry about getting every little bit of it out of there. What's left is fine. Add the rest of your butter. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dump my carrots in because they are not cooked and they're very hard. I want to make sure they get soft. And I'm going to dump my cabbage in. Now, you don't have to use the cabbage if you don't want to. If you just want regular fried rice, you know, you wouldn't add the cabbage. But adding it does add a lot of nutrients to it. I really like the flavor. I like the flavor of egg rolls, and they're mostly stuffed with cabbage. So that kind of gives you that flavor of egg rolls and fried rice together. And it's all in one dish. If I was using fresh peas, you could go ahead and add those. Frozen peas, you'd want to wait just a little while until this starts to cook down a little bit. But because these are canned peas, they're already really soft. So I'm going to wait until after I add my rice to add those peas. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt to this. If you're on a really low salt diet though, wait until the very end to add your salt, because you won't have to add as much and it will have more flavor. You could also use salt substitute in this if you wanted to, or the light salt. But there are a lot of different varieties of salt available now. And if you have dietary restrictions, check some of those out. Check out like the pink Himalayan salt and the natural sea salt. Not regular sea salt, the natural stuff. It's kind of a brown color, because those seem to be a little less detrimental to your health if you already have heart problems. And you know, this is just a taste, so just add and taste it, or wait until near the end and add and taste it. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little pepper. And I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of this soy sauce. Now, or liquid aminos. When you're cooking with this stuff, if you haven't cooked a lot with it, go slow. It's really strong, and a little bit makes a big difference really fast. Okay, our cabbage is starting to brown just a little bit. You don't have to brown it a whole lot, but a little bit of brown gives it some flavor. About the only way you can mess it up is if you burn it. You do want to cook it enough to make sure those carrots are tender. You don't want real hard chunks of carrots in the middle of your fried rice. The texture just doesn't mesh well. See, our rice still has about 6 minutes on the timer. So we're just going to let this sit here and cook. Now we can go ahead at this point and add our chicken. And the chicken, like I said, is optional. If you don't want the chicken in your fried rice, you don't have to use it. But you can also use pork if you've got a little leftover pork roast, beef if you've got some leftover beef roast. Just shred it up and put it in here, and it will add that protein to it to make it a meal. Or a can of anything. You do want to make sure you drain it well if you're using canned stuff. And you just want to bust it up so that it kind of blends in. You don't want those big, huge pieces of chicken in there. If you're using canned meats, keep in mind that they all have added salt, so that's going to affect how much salt you have to add as you're seasoning it. So make sure you kind of allow for that and taste, and don't do too much salt if you're doing canned meat. Okay, we're just going to let this sit here and cook until our rice is done, which it just has like 3 minutes left now. And like I said, if you put that lid on there and you leave it on there for 20 minutes and don't take it off, make sure it's turned down enough so that it doesn't boil over, but it's still boiling, it'll come out perfect. You don't need any kind of special pot or anything special to cook it, just a tight lid. Okay, our rice is done. And you can see there, all the liquid is completely absorbed, and the rice is nice and fluffy. I've seen people rinse their rice after they cook it. I don't understand that. Like I said, it doesn't have very many nutrients to start with, and if you rinse it, it's going to take even more of the nutrients out of it. So I do not do that. And you can cook, 4 or 6 cups at a time and use it in several dishes throughout the course of the week, so that you don't have to take that 20 minutes every time you prepare a meal. And if you have leftover rice, you've got a pretty quick one-pot meal with this. If the rice was left over and cold, you could add it when you started the cabbage, because it would take a little longer for it to get hot and start to brown. Or you could start the cabbage for just a few minutes and then add it, maybe cook the cabbage for about 5 or 10 minutes and then add it, where ours has been in there for at least 15 minutes. It's been in there since we took the egg out. This much will feed 4 or 5 people at least. Maybe even as many as 6. It kind of depends on how hungry everybody is and what else you're making with it. If this is all you're having, I would say probably no more than 4 people. But if you're making this much, you're going to need like a 10-inch pan at least. Okay, I'm going to add a little more soy sauce to it. And I'm probably not going to add any more salt to it, because I did salt my rice when I cooked it, and I added a little salt to my cabbage when I put it in here, and that chicken definitely had salt in it. I'm also going to add a little more pepper. Now at this point, all I want to do is just kind of cook it until my rice starts to brown a little bit. And it won't take too long, because the rice was hot where I just cooked it, and the cabbage is already cooked and it's already brown, it's done. So, you know, the rice won't take too long to start to brown. I kind of let the bottom of the pan brown once. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my eggs back in, because I want to make sure they're good and hot. And I'm going to add my peas in to make sure they get good and hot. And when the bottom browns again, I'm going to give it a stir and let the bottom brown one more time. And that should be good for the whole recipe. I mean, that should give it the right texture. It should be about the right color. And the rice will be like fried rice. It'll have that fried rice texture rather than the steam texture. Give it a good stir and make sure everything is mixed up. Right now is when you want to taste it, and make sure you got your salt right. And keep in mind, you can always add more salt on the table so that everybody gets it the way they like it. But you do want to make sure you've adjusted your soy sauce or your liquid aminos so that it tastes right, because you don't really want to add that on the table. The flavor is better if it's cooked in a little bit. I think I'm going to add a little bit more to mine. I've probably, by the time I add this, will have about a teaspoon in there. But it's entirely up to you how much you want. Okay, that's all there is to it. If you've got leftover rice, you've got a one-pot meal in about 20 minutes. Whether or not you add the cabbage is entirely up to you, or if you wanted to do cauliflower or even a different vegetable. And depending on your diet, you might even want to use a larger ratio of cabbage and less rice to cut the calories and to cut the sugar content in the recipe even more. It's really something that you can play with, and you can adjust, you can adapt it to suit your tastes and your dietary needs. But you've got a pretty nutritious meal here in one pot that you can do 20 minutes on a weeknight.
Thank you so much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. And I would like to leave you with Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. For a truly contented life, remember to put God first.